So, welcome to 13 Minutes Why Every Man Needs a Why. I am so excited for this podcast episode. It's been a relatively long time in the making, but finally it is happening. My final one in the year 2025, by the way. And I have in a virtual studio at the very least, Greg Scheinman. How you doing, Greg?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. Happy and healthy holidays. Here's to closing out 25 strong and starting 26 even stronger.
I love it. We're going to dig into a lot of important ideas and information. I've just been so enamored by the work that you've done, and I'll talk a little more about that in a second. But I'd like to begin with a pretty rough, raw, and real question that my teacher and mentor, Viktor Frankl, asked his patients. I'm sure you know, but maybe some people don't know. He was a world-renowned psychiatrist and neurologist. He was a Holocaust survivor. He wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning and created logotherapy. And I'm a logotherapist. It's meaning-centered, not therapy, meaning-centered living. So Viktor Frankl would ask a question of his patients that cut through all the noise and the bullshit and got straight to it. And I'm going to ask you that question, Greg. Why haven't you killed yourself?
Because I'm a happy guy, and happy guys don't kill themselves. At least not to me anyway. Uh,
It's absolutely unequivocally true. When people are in a good place, when they're happy, they choose life, right? And so, one of the reasons why I wanted you to come on the show is because I've seen that happiness translated through so many different medium that you're involved with, your magazine, Midlife Mail, your podcast, which I know is morphed a little bit, and we'll talk about that, your book by the same name, right? You're an interesting dude, got a lot of interesting, happy things going on.
well, I appreciate it very much. And look, that's my answer, which is the truthful one. But I think also the truth is that it doesn't mean you're happy all the time.
Mhm.
And it doesn't mean that you don't have stress, anxiety, bouts of depression or unhappiness or dissatisfaction, periods of life with conformity, complacency, redundancy, lack of excitement. By saying I'm a generally happy guy, it's also not a blanket statement that life is all rainbows and unicorns, and unfettered happiness 100% of the time.
Right.
But I do think the reality and the truth for me is that certainly the happiness outweighs the depression or the anxiety or the stresses or the realities of real life. And that to me is possibility. That's hope. That's probability of a great, at this point also, second half or next stage or chapter of life, wherever you're starting from and getting that realization.
Exactly. Viktor Frankl didn't ask it to be depressing, to be morbid, to focus on death. He actually did the opposite. He has a famous saying, quoting from Nietzsche, he who has a why to live for can endure anyhow. He was all about the why. I call him the OG why guy. Before Simon Sinek, as much as I love Simon Sinek, there was Viktor Frankl of the Holocaust. And the reason why he asked this question is because a guy walking through his door, first time he's ever met him, he doesn't know anything about him other than he chooses life. That's what brought him through the door. And so that's what we're going to dig into is not your why not, why haven't you killed yourself, but what do you live for? What's your why? And so I have gathered that happiness has a front seat on your journey of life, especially second half of life, but it sounds like it's been with you for a very long time.
It has, off and on. And I think that there are, again, chapters and periods of our life where things shift. I had a happy upbringing, and then my dad got sick from the time I was 15, 16, 17, ultimately passed away when I was 17,
He was
right
40,
before I was going off
47.
to college, 47.
Yeah.
You know? Then I had a period of life that was not so happy. And then a period of life where you try to work your way through getting back to being happy and content and thinking about what it is that you want to live for. What do you have to live for? What do you want to do? You get into another chapter of your life when you're starting in your career and ultimately meeting the right partner and then having children. And now here we are at another chapter as empty nesters and in midlife. So there's seasons and their chapters, and there's ebb and flow, I think, in the degrees of happiness, if you want to put it on a scale. And to that effect, I also think that the why changes. And there's a lot of focus on why. I've been outspoken about this for a while. There's a lot of focus on why, whether it's through cynic, whether it's through whoever however many variations or variables or teachers, of why and who focus on that. And then there's also the application of once you find your why or you know your why, how are you going to go about actually achieving it, reaching it, fulfilling it, staying up there,
Yeah.
which is really hard.
Well, I know your work has really revolved around execution of the why, or we might call it the how, right? I've listened to many, many podcasts. I mean, you have hundreds of podcasts. I haven't listened to them all, but it feels very much about how to execute on a why.
That was my struggle. For me, is discovering or finding my why. That was the easier part. The harder part for me was figuring out how to actually be good at it. How to actually really work towards, is what I'm doing actually going to bring me closer to that why? Is it going to provide the fulfillment? Is it going to actually prove the model? This actually is the why, and it delivers happiness or satisfaction. It might be financial success, family success, health success, however you want to define those things. But the knowing why, for me, why I wanted to be a better father, why I wanted to be a better husband, why I wanted to be successful in business, why at this point I want to serve more men and build, a new community out there. Those whys actually came pretty simply to me.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the whole reasons I started the podcast and started writing and started talking to gentlemen like you, and why I'm so happy to always do these things, is because this is what helps me with the how.
Yeah.
Asking other guys, talking to other people, experiencing different things. And then, I call it, this little ACE principle that I have, aggregating from all of this information and insight and experience that's out there, but curating it down to what works for me,
Mm-hmm.
and then eliminating the stuff that doesn't. And can I help more men do that? So that they're not just sitting in their why, but they're executing also on the how, which makes that why, I think, all that more fulfilling.
So Frankel talks about, he calls it logos, it's meaning, it's why. He uses all those interchangeably. And what he talks about, and what I'm a logotherapist, I help men discover, is there isn't merely an ultimate why. There might be. I can't know it. I'll look back retrospectively and maybe it'll all come together on that deathbed moment when it all, flashes. But it doesn't matter, because there's logos or meaning of the moment, right? And I've seen on your journey, there's been a lot of little whys. So maybe I know we're saying the same thing.
Yep.
Let's stop focusing on the capital W and let's get into all the little W's, see them as they manifest. Because, I'd like to hear more about it. Your journey hasn't been a straight path. I mean, from Hollywood, which is, part of your story, to where you're at now, is a very different trajectory, right? So a lot of different small W's.
Absolutely. Look, I didn't know, again, exactly what I really wanted to do as I was growing up. And I think it's safe to say I came from a pretty incestuous community, came from a very privileged lifestyle. And the norm was kind of the path. You graduate high school, you go to a good college, you graduate college, you get a job, ultimately you meet somebody and you get married and you have kids. And pretty much everybody I knew went right back home to where they grew up, and they went into one of a half a dozen fields, kind of very professional or financial or whatever it might, they were doctors and lawyers and bankers and, that kind of stuff. And that felt very foreign to me. It didn't. And again, once my father passed away, there wasn't a business to go into. There wasn't anybody mentoring me directly or telling me what I needed to do or should do or had to do. I felt like it was wide open. Um, and that's where I gravitated towards entertainment just because it seemed like fun. It seemed like the opposite of putting a suit on and going to work every day. And I was interested in film and television and those types of mediums. So I went after that. And it was really as simple as that. Let me just try. One thing I think I've been pretty good with or blessed with over the years is that I've always had the confidence to be willing to try and do something different, whatever the result might end up being. Don't know how to make a movie? Well, I'll try to make a movie. What's the worst that can happen? Nobody sees it. We lose a bunch of money, in there. You don't know how to make a TV show? Well, I can go call a bunch of guys and say, listen, can I interview you for this TV show I have? And then go call the TV station and say, hey, I have all these guys that are willing to be on my TV show. Like just putting stuff together and not being afraid of really what the reaction was going to be or how it was going to go. So I think out of all the inconsistencies in my life and even in my career trajectory, the one consistency has been a willingness to try and to do different things and to, not accept failure or not like failure, but understand that when you try, you're going to fail. You'll make a movie that nobody sees. You'll record a podcast that nobody listens to. You might write a book that nobody reads. I'll open a rowing studio that nobody wants to row at. You find these things out over time. But to your point about the big W's and the little W's, like you start stacking up little wins along the way. You start to get better at things, and then ultimately some things work and they go well. So, success isn't infinite and failure isn't infinite either. They're both just things that happen.
Yeah, my previous incarnation, I was a rabbi, and so we teach what we know. In the Torah, the people that we revere are the people who fail and get up over and over again. We come from that man, Abraham, and the people who are one and dones, right? They rise up, they fail, they disappear. That's failure. And so I really see in you, and I've watched in your journey, and I've listened to so much of try, fall, learn, get up, move forward over and over again. It feels like a very inspiring journey.
I think what we miss and what a lot of guys miss along the way is the appreciation of the process of going through it, and being in it. And that really actually is where the breakthroughs happen, where the real learning takes place, where the real root of the success is, not in the end result. Whether it went well and you end up at the top of the mountain, which I know people that have and looked around and go, it's very lonely up here. Okay, there's nobody else here with me. Or you go through the process, you make something, you put your heart and soul into everything, and it doesn't go your way. And you're at that tipping point. Also, you're at a tipping point either way. I was actually having this conversation with my son when he was just home. He fought in his first boxing match in Boulder and
awesome.
Didn't get the decision. And at the heart of it, it was one of those, well, let's take a look at also what happened here. Over the course of 12 weeks, you got in the best shape of your life. You ate better. Your confidence went up. The alcohol went down. Your GPA was the highest it had ever been. You were proud of taking your shirt off in there. We'd done some of this training and everything before. You applied to do something that most people will never do. 10 guys got in the ring that night. 1,000 people stood in the audience. 30-something thousand go to the university. Like that's a win, regardless. All of these things are wins regardless of whether you got the actual decision in the particular fight itself. And it
Yeah.
won't be
And
your last one. And again, you're going to learn more from adversity and again, getting knocked down than you will have if it went easily, if it went smoothly.
for sure. I was a club boxer at KU and I just learned how to, I sucked, but I learned how to take a punch, right? That's invaluable in this lifetime to
What
just
do they say?
not be
Everybody's got a,
scared.
yeah, everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the face, right? In there
Exactly.
too.
Mike Tyson.
So, those are, I think those are the things. And I think it's somewhat of a small and somewhat maybe semi-exclusive club of entrepreneurship, if you will, or people that are willing to take those kinds of risks and get outside maybe the proverbial norms and do that. Those are the guys I tend to really work well with
Hmm.
and spend a lot of time with.
So tell me about those guys. How are you working with them these days? I know you have a lot of different medium that you're getting your message out. What do you tell me about that journey and what are you focused on?
Yeah, I wish I could tell you that it was all part of, a grand linear plan. But it really wasn't. What really transpired for me, and I'll give you just references, I'm 53 now, just turned 53 the other day. And at 47, when I was the same age as when my father passed away, I was a partner in a big insurance and risk management company. I did end up having to put the suit on, after years of creativity and entrepreneurship. Uh, Found myself in a very professional and non-creative environment for a period of years where I think a lot of guys can relate to this too. Greater financial success and stability, not a lot of personal passion. You're kind of in there, but a lot of responsibility with two children, a wife, overhead, and all that. You get to those periods where sometimes you got to do what you got to do
Mhm.
in there. Um, and at 47, after doing that for a while, coming up on my 10-year anniversary there, I just found myself in that position where, okay, uh, I'm the same age as when my father passed away, and what am I going to do now? Is this the best I'm going to look, the best I'm going to feel, the best I'm going to do? Do I want to sit in this, or do I want to pour some rocket fuel on the next phase of my life? And what would that look like to make some changes? And that's how this really all started. And to your initial question, around why big or small W's, I didn't know really where to start. And that's when what I did have is I had a network. I had a really good personal and professional network built up over about 20 years. And I started calling up people and interviewing them and asking them the questions that I had about myself. It was very selfish. This wasn't, to serve others at the time. This wasn't to create a huge podcast. This was to really just have conversations with entrepreneurs, risk takers, successful men that I could ask them the questions that I was too afraid to really ask myself or ask anybody else for help about. And then take what they were telling me and see if I could apply it to my life and what would happen. And that's what I really did from 47 to 50 was conduct these interviews that became the podcast. Then I would experiment with what these guys told me. I would write about it in my blog. Those two things became my book. I got approached by a publisher who said, "We're going to do a book." And I'm like, "I don't write books. I don't know. Like, I'm not a writer. I'm not this." And the guy's like, "You've done it. You've had 100 and some plus interviews at this point, and you've written a blog every Sunday for the last 2 years. The book's done."
Mm.
And they put it together. I was too close to it at the time to even really be a good editor. I'm like, you guys got to figure out what the good stuff is here, because I'm too close to all of it. And the book came out, and it was a real instant hit on Amazon, and that led to some speaking engagements and getting out there and talking in front of men's groups and entrepreneurs organizations and even businesses. And that led to guys pulling me aside and saying, "Hey, like, can you help me?" Which led to a coaching practice. And most of my clients, to the type of men they are, these are guys that are really 40 to 55 years old. They are kind of C-level guys, they're entrepreneurs, C-level guys, kind of higher rank executive, professional type guys who are at that stage of life where they're juggling a lot of the things that we've all juggled. Again, family, health, which is fitness, finance, what is success? How much money do I need to do what I want with who I want for as long as I want? What wheel am I on here? Style, am I having fun, or is my fun just golfing or drinking or poker? Like, what is it? All these areas, and that's become a big portion of my work. And then the newsletter grew from there. That blog became digital magazine that we put out each week, which is now reaching over 35,000 men and expanding into new contributors and writers and topics. And guys are just as interested in a deep, thought-provoking interview with somebody like yourself as they are with, hey, who makes the jacket you're wearing? Like, that's really cool. So we try to do this kind of mixture, if you will, of narrow and deep, but also the shallow and wide, meet them where they are.
So the logotherapist in me says, Frankel's has an idea of transforming tragedy into triumph. And I go back to what I call crisis crossroads, but crisis from the Greek meaning choice. So choice points, choice crossroads. And I just hear this and I read about it and I listened to it. Total aside, your book is awesome for many reasons, not the least of which is how the editors integrated parts of the podcast, which really makes it different. So total aside, amazing. But going back to the crisis crossroads at 47, I've heard you reference it in 10 different places. And it feels to me like that was a defining moment. I also got to learn a little bit about your dad in the book, that he was your closest confidant, that he was a person you would go to as a mentor, as this father, not just a father, but a father figure. And I imagine when he died, you lost a lot of that. And transforming tragedy to triumph feels like you recreated some of that.
I hope so. It's important to me to try to live my legacy and live his legacy in a positive way. It absolutely was a crisis point for me. It was a long period of time, I think, where I sat in lacking confidence and security. Can't say I never thought about killing myself. There were periods of time where I was definitely, I drank too much and I experimented with too many different things that were not really good for me, in there, and living very recklessly, almost in this hope that, like, maybe something bad would happen to me or could happen to me. There was always that dichotomy for me for a while that was like, okay, live fast, die young, leave a good-looking corpse. And then, well, isn't that just a cop-out? And there's so much more to live for. And what if actually living my legacy and living his legacy and becoming a more positive influence and force in the world would be better? And and I ask myself that better one or two question all the time. Which one seems better? And, the latter just seemed a lot better. It seemed healthier. It seemed happier. It seemed more optimistic. And it was really as simple as that. Like, okay, it's time to just pick yourself up and start moving forward in a more productive and positive manner. And a lot of that was, self-reliance and just learn. I don't know whether it was the right way to go about it, but I didn't come from a background where we really asked for a lot of help or turned to a lot of other people for help. It was, okay, like, I've got the last name. There's no other father in this family. I'm the oldest guy, if you will, right now. I better go figure some shit out. Sorry if I can say, and go do it. And stop looking backwards, because that's not the direction I'm going anymore. So what does this relentless pursuit of forward motion actually look like?
Love it. I'm very passionate about father-son relationships. I have 4 kids, 2 of which are boys. And partially for me, it comes from a father who killed himself. So this conversation, the opening is relevant, and I'm committed to my mission. It's called 13 Minutes because every 13 minutes in America, a man kills himself, and my mission is to push it back to 14 minutes. And that's 2,888 men that will live because they're listening to Greg's story, listening to your why. And I was so touched hearing a few times about your relationship with your dad. And in this conversation, hearing about your relationship with your dad, it feels to me like that is just a pivotal piece of your identity as well, not only with your dad, but with your sons.
Absolutely. I wouldn't wish the situation or circumstance on anybody, much like anyone who's experienced any kind of trauma, tragedy, whether that's through disease or through suicide or any other type of occurrence or something that we've all dealt with. But one thing I do say is that situations and circumstances can either defeat us or they can define us. And that's a choice. Not an easy one to make, just like living with any type of trauma or depression, mental illness, physical is not easy. And at times for people, and I don't want to speak for anybody else, but at times I think we all feel, at least I know I felt, that certain things are insurmountable. You don't always see a clear path out or a path out at all from certain things. And those are, those valleys of despair that are really tough. And I went through them in my late teens. I know I experienced it in my 20s. And there were periods still in my 30s and 40s where I felt times where I just don't really know how I'm going to get through this. It was never deep-seated, can't get out of bed type depression and trauma in there. But it was a lot of there was a lot of woe is me. There was a lot of pity parties. There was a lot of, okay, why does it always have to be so hard? Or why do I always have to make it so hard? A lot of what I tend to put myself through is like self-inflicted difficulty, making things harder than they have to be. And a lot of that has changed and evolved as I think, changed and evolved with a more openness to asking for help, communicating more openly, even finding little hacks, if you will, that work for me, like bring a microphone. I don't love having these conversations with real people, if you will, in real places in real time. But guess what? If I can bring a microphone, I'm obligated to ask these questions. I feel a greater responsibility to be more open, to be more transparent. I don't love doing it in my own house. I don't love going to do it in a temple. I don't enjoy sitting in circles with other men, throwing all of our problems out there and listening to theirs. It's very, very uncomfortable for me. It's why more of the work that I do is on a one-to-one basis with men. And then speaking through writing, speaking through conversations and podcasts like this, I'm somehow able to get up on a stage and say it in front of thousands of people a lot easier than I am by going to some weekend in the woods with all the people that you're supposed to really talk to about it. It just, you find, I guess, your little ways or even big ways of coping and dealing. And some of that might be running away from it. Some of it might be creating a little bit of an amplified version or character of myself. Some of it might be really owning it and what I talk to my sons about and what I talk to my wife about and what I talk to my few close friends about. I think it's all there, back to this notion we got to figure out kind of what works for us. And I think it's different for everybody. But can we build some form of support or system or structure, however you want to call it, that we can go through that process systematically and find what works for us and then have the discipline to continue it?
Well, a big part of that I heard in your opening statement, if you will, the different stages of life. I mean, you said something very powerful in there, that this stage, the midlife male, midlife onwards, whatever you want to call it, which is, it's always hard to define what is midlife. I think both of us probably statistically cross the threshold. Bottom line, service. You said, I'm here to serve. And that's a shift midlife onwards. Am I recalling that correctly?
Absolutely. Look, I think as I mentioned, I think I started off from a very selfish place. This is about helping myself. And to an extent, I believe in that too. The adage of put your oxygen mask on before you help the person next to you. And I don't think that self care is selfish. I think self care is one of the most selfless things that you can do. I think there's a period where, for me, I wasn't in a position to help or to serve others. What I wanted to do was put myself in a position where it was even an option or a possibility that I had something of value or something where I could be of service to others. So that's what I spent a lot of time working on first, was working on myself, which, again, I'm a slow learner and a late bloomer. That didn't start until 47. The light bulb really didn't go off until I felt like I was in bonus time. Wait a minute. I've lived a day longer, an hour longer than my father did. This is bonus time. I wasn't even sure I was going to get here. So being a little late to the game was okay. Now can I expedite the learning curve? What can I do for me? And who could help me expedite that learning curve? And then get to a position where I don't know if I necessarily realized it, or at least maybe some of the public helped me realize it, or even one guy at a time who sent a nice email, or somebody like yourself who said, "Hey, can we talk, on this?" When it started coming the other way, and it started to feel like, okay, maybe what you're doing now is actually helping other people. Maybe it's impacting other men. You start to attract and repel exactly what you deserve. I'm going to say a lot of, I stopped attracting, drinkers and can I curse on this?
Go for it,
Okay.
man.
I stopped attracting drinkers and fuck ups and assholes and like really just kind of inauthentic relationships and clients and all of that. And just started to attract a more genuine type of individual that was there, different types of opportunities. And what changed was really the things that I was doing, the actions that I was taking, the choices that I was making. That just happened over a period of time where, hey, when you stop going out late and drinking and you start waking up earlier and going to the gym, and you show up regularly to the gym and you stop showing up regularly to the bar, who are you going to be around?
Totally. I
Those were the things. It's like, oh, wait a minute. I don't have to sell insurance to that person in that industry, in that part of town, or wherever it might be, that I don't want to, just because it's a big premium and that's what other people do at my firm. I could go serve any of these other industries where I have a genuine interest or even more of a passion. These things, they just started happening. I was learning this from so many other guys. Wait a minute, there's an opportunity to combine personal passion with professional expertise. You can do that? Tell me how, because that sounds like a really good why. I like that as the why. Now tell me how I can go about doing that.
love it. So good. So much there. Um, Frankel talks about, the work that I do, and one of the reasons why I became a logotherapist is because it all revolves around choice. Right. His famous statement out of the Holocaust was, "This is the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. That is the only freedom we have." And I do love, and I want to hear more about midlife and your focus on both men and midlife. But I feel like that's the crossroads that men either do or don't wake up to, that you have a choice. And you named that a lot during your talk.
I think you hit the nail on the head with that. I think first you referenced something a few minutes ago that I think is important in terms of, what is midlife? And I think I know a lot of very old 30 somethings and I know a lot of very young 60 somethings. I think it's it's wherever you find yourself at that crossroads or at that tipping point or at a place where it may just be, hey, I'm starting to question some things around there. So I think as we continue to expand or extend the life expectancy, as we continue to have more options and choices and possibilities about how to live healthier and happier and longer, who knows exactly where they're going to put the number, on midlife and if it even matters at all. So I think that's the first thing. And I think, the second part of it, as far as it pertains to choices, I think that's it right there. I think that a successful, if you will, how midlife or at any stage of your life comes down to the actions you take and the choices that you make. And when you make the better choice the majority of the time, the majority of your life gets better. And I purposefully don't say make the better choice all the time because none of us are perfect, especially myself. And it comes down to sometimes the better choice is not the ideal choice, or maybe not sometimes that better choice is to have the pizza. When you're with your kids and you're going out, and sometimes it is to go enjoy that bottle of wine with great friends sitting around the fire on vacation. It could be any of these things. Sometimes it might be to quit the job to follow your passion. Other times that might be the most irresponsible thing you could do. But it is a series of choices. And I think at the root of all of that, it is an understanding and a belief that you always have a choice and that the choice is actually always yours and that we have to own our choices and be respectful and responsible to those choices that we make, because you got to look in the mirror. Every day we got to wake up and we got to look at the mirror. And if we don't like the guy staring back at us, we got to change it. And that in itself is a choice. Sleep in, wake up. Go to the gym, sit on the couch. Kiss your wife good morning, ignore her when you roll out of bed, every day. All of these things, are choices, and the little things are the big things.
I just, we're so in sync on so many ways. I just wrote a book called The Guy in the Glass. Are you ready to be you ready to see the man you were meant to be? Based on a famous poem called The Guy in the Glass. And if you don't have that, if you can't go and look him in the eye and like him, respect him, you got nothing, right? And you've worked with enough of these guys. I buried enough of these guys to know they had everything on paper and they didn't have that inside of themselves.
You've done incredible work in that space, and what you're committed to doing with your mission, and the value of that. One thing, for me that, that's important, that really helps me, and I think helps a lot of guys right now that I've had the experience to be around, is that it's hard to stay out of that valley of despair that I talk to. It's hard not to complain. It's hard not to wallow in things, or not to look at it could always be better, and what's going wrong, or who it is, that misery loves company kind of attitude and atmosphere that I think permeates a lot of men in various degrees, from deep depression and pain and to just the run of the mill. We go out to dinner with a few couples every week, and the guys sit at one end of the table and the women sit at the other end of the table, and the guys talk about I'm not getting laid enough, and work is really hard, and I'm this, and this hurts and that hurts, and it just it's really hard. Like that seems to be more natural in a way. What's hard is staying out of it. And one thing I work on constantly is, how do I stay out of that? How do I stay out of the complaining? How do I stay out of the masses, in there? How do I stay away from reading all the news and watching all the things? And back to the choices, it's like, okay, can I choose to read a book for fun? not another self-help book. It's not like how many self-help books? Like I'm done reading self-help books for a while. Like, okay, can I read something just for pure joy and for fun? Can I get outside? Can I put things on my calendar? Can I look at, and I'm around a lot of happy and, or when I'm around a lot of healthy people taking on some kind of physical challenge, what do I tend to see? I tend to see happier guys, there.
So good, so important. This is also, I think, the work of the second half of life. I teach the Enneagram. Are you familiar with the Enneagram? It's a personality typing system.
Yep.
But I teach it from the Frankel perspective, which is you are not a number. God forbid. He was prisoner 119104. I would never turn another human being into a number. I show up and I react. When I'm in that place of fear that you're describing, I react like an 8, a challenger. That's just my reaction. But I don't have to, I can choose to defy that. So I call it defy your number, right? Defy your circumstances. This is Frankel's idea that the Nazis couldn't choose for him his internal reality, only his external reality. And I think midlife particularly presents us an opportunity to defy the circumstances, not to succumb to them. And I heard you say that.
I think you're absolutely right. I think what you're touching on here is so important. Giving yourself the permission or the belief that you can actually change. And I'll give you an example. Like I think I'm naturally wired to be lazy. Like I'm naturally wired to enjoy drinking and smoking, and all the things that I used to do. I like them. If I could live forever and feel really good doing them, I would. I'm not as naturally inclined to get up and go to the gym, to push these physical things. For a while, I had almost nobody that wanted to do any of this stuff with me. I didn't know anybody that did a lot of this stuff. However, the ability to actually change and to just at least recognize, hey, this is kind of how I'm more naturally wired. I'm a little bit more reckless. I'm a little bit more impulsive. This is what sets me off. This is like, it's easier for me to sleep in, than it is to get up and go to the gym. All of these different things. Just give yourself permission for that to all be okay. But it's also okay to make a different choice. And
Amen.
to consistently make different choices. And to realize, okay, there's a lot of white space between getting up before the sun rises at 4 a.m. and crushing yourself at 5 a.m. with these guys and getting to the gym at 9 o'clock, if you can in the morning. Or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. There's just as many people there at 5 o'clock as there are at 5 o'clock in the morning. Either way. But being consistent and kind of retraining yourself that it's okay to step outside of maybe who you are. You can be more. You don't just have to kind of accept that, like, I'm going to run slowly, or I'm going to just keep buying bigger pants as my waist expands. Or, hey, look, I don't mind being bald. I mind being fat and bald. I have control over that if I make better choices about what I put in my body and what I do physically in there.
Yeah.
So I think we kind of pigeonhole ourselves a lot. We just start to accept that this is the way it's going to be and kind of forget who I am and what I'm capable of. And I just don't think that that's true in my experience, because if you would have told me, a few years ago, or even when I was starting this around 47, that I would have hiked the equivalent of Mount Everest going on 5 years in a row right now, that I will have, held my breath underwater for 3 minutes at this time, that I will have gone and done the deep work, sitting in the circles, going to the places, and quote unquote graduated from that I will have gotten to sit down and interview some of my idols of action, adventure, accomplishment, success, I would have told you to bet the under. But you just start doing it each day, a little bit each day, and you build up a really solid life resume. And people start to pay attention to the person who keeps showing up.
So yes, and some of it, it is choice. And also what I love about midlife, both personally going through it and guiding other men through it, is that we get to challenge the assumptions that I am fill in the blank. I am the mask, personality, persona, mask. We start telling ourselves, I am extroverted. I am introverted. I am the flesh suit, right? Years ago, I thought I was, more of this and less of this. And it's not who I am, right? Who I am is something transcendent. It's something beyond that. And midlife gives me, at least, and the people that I work with, I see it in them, the opportunity, maybe in the first time in their life, to really see through the flesh suit, see through the personas that it just couldn't do earlier.
I think that's really accurate. I don't think that I care less. I don't think, midlife is that time where, oh, I don't have to give up anymore, or I could care less about what anybody else thinks. Or I'm like, no, I care very much. I just care much more carefully and much more intentionally about the things I care about rather than think about the things I don't have to care about
Which is a
necessarily
choice. That's a
anymore.
choice.
Again, back to that choice notion that's there. And I think these years, maybe it's wisdom, maybe it's perspective, maybe it's experience. You can call it, any one of those things. I'm super excited for 50 to 70. Like, I'm fired up that these are going to be really the best years of, I think, my life and my family's life. I mean, we're fortunate enough, again, as I say, bonus time, that for me at 53 right now, and my wife's 56, we've got a 22-year-old and a 19-year-old. The fact that we are healthy and we are young in our 50s and we've weathered a lot of storms, personally, professionally, financially, relationship wise, all of these different things. And we're still standing, and not just standing, but I think realistically thriving in a lot of ways. Like, these are really exciting years. I think they're going to be very expensive years. I factor that into, because we want to do a lot of stuff, which means I got to work really, really hard and be really, intentional and purposeful with the choices that I make, and where does time go, and what are we doing and also not doing there. But that's also really exciting, to look at the calendar off on the wall and go, okay, what's going to happen this year? It's already there. What do we have to look forward to? I think that's an important thing, is having things to look forward to. I went on a walk with a guy just the other day, and really successful doctor, and has all this accrued vacation time. And it's like, oh, whereas we were walking, all this accrued vacation time. Well, what are you going to do this year? Well, I really want to take, at least, 3 or 4 days off a month. Okay. Have you ever done that before? No. How do you think you're going to go about doing that right now? You start getting into, again, like, well, I was thinking of like putting it in, maybe I'll just put it in, each month, I'll just tell them, I want a couple of days off. I'm like, it's going to happen, right? You're not going to do it. Or they're going to schedule you for 4 more surgeries, 5 more surgeries, and then on the days that you wanted to take off, but you never told them you wanted the days off. So now you're going to feel guilty because you already scheduled, you don't want to cancel it. And then you're going to stay on this cycle. Another year is going to go by when you're going to have accrued another however many days of vacation, and you're reaching a number that you'll never actually utilize all these. And it's affecting your performance. It's affecting your demeanor. It's affecting your family, all of these things. And you and I are just walking in circles. And the point of this is not to walk in circles. The point is to get outside the circle and do something about it. So where we ended on it was, how about when you go into work on the 2nd of January, you put in every single day that you want off for the entire year? Because what we schedule actually gets done.
Amen.
And you've earned the right to do it without guilt, without any kind of shame, without any kind of real, other than self-induced worry, and pressure that you're going to put on yourself because you've never done anything like this before, and it's uncomfortable to do something you've never done before. But it's like, dude, you're the chief of the department. You get to choose.
Right. A teacher of mine, Earl Nightingale, says the road of someday leads to the town of nowhere. Right. And someday isn't a thing. Or it's the retirement horrible concept that we have. You know how many guys I buried who retired and died? And like there's a direct correlation because they lived this way, doing, stop doing. You haven't learned the skills. You haven't learned the power to choose, to say no, to put on your mask first, as you were referencing. It doesn't happen someday. That leads to nowhere. So it's a good reminder.
It's unfortunate. What was the other sentence or something? It's like, some guys, live their whole, they live to 71, but they were buried at 31 or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's two very drastic sides of this. One that you're talking about, which is obviously final in the men that take their own lives. And how awful that is to get to a place where you feel like you have nothing else to live for and you take your own life. And then there are the others that are alive, but dreading the lives that they live each day and not making any better choices to change their situation or their circumstances.
That's right. The question really isn't why haven't you killed yourself? It's why are you killing yourself, right?
You can do it, apparently, I guess you can do it quickly. You can do it slowly. And there are other ways to choose. While my father did not directly kill himself, I can tell you smoking 3 packs of cigarettes a day is killing yourself. It's choosing to kill yourself. Different, very much so. But it's still a choice. And I mean, there's certain things that I look at, again, as a father, the example that I want to set, the ability, at least the effort that I'm willing to put in, or the choices I'm willing to make to try to live a very long and healthy life, to be able to provide for as long as possible. And I don't just mean that financially, but just to provide by being there.
Amazing.
And being capable. They're all considerations.
Important ones. And you are really modeling it. And it comes through loud and clear in this, not only in this, but in the magazine that I have read, in the book, in the podcast. I can't encourage the listeners to find their way to you. Are there other ways that they can get involved? I know you were running some retreats. What else is going on?
Yeah, appreciate it very much. First and foremost, everything is in the newsletter. So anything I'm doing, if I'm speaking somewhere, coaching, things that are going on, retreats, adventures, things that we're doing, the newsletter is the easiest place to stay up on all of that. But we are getting much more involved right now in doing live and in-person experiences throughout the year. Some of them that I am putting together through Midlife Mail directly, what we call our excellent adventures, which are really, I think, very positive, very uplifting, really kind of accomplished guys who want to get together and have the kind of weekends and experiences that they say that they always want to plan for themselves and never do. So we make it really, really easy. All you have to do is show up and we'll take care of the rest there. And then some others, which I'm really excited about, where we're partnering with other great organizations who are doing, like, really, again, these are things I just want to do. I want to go hike that mountain. And we're going to partner with the guys at 29029 and take a dozen guys this year to Sun Valley, Idaho. I have never gone free diving before. So we've partnered with XPT, which is Laird Hamilton and Gabby Reese's company. And I'm going to do a free diving weekend in Rotown, Honduras at the end of February. We're going to climb a 14er, Gray's Peak. I'm glancing at my calendar right now. It's all up on the wall. We're going to climb Gray's Peak in Colorado, which is one of the 14ers, with my friend Sterling Hawkins, who wrote Hunting Discomfort. I'm facilitating a week in Cabo at Modern Elder Academy in April. These are the things that light me up, that get me excited when I glance over and have things to look forward to, and this opportunity now to invite more guys to join me at these things. And I say this, Baruch, as somebody who is not a joiner. Like, I'm not naturally wired to be a joiner or to be a leader of these types of things. And that's why I get so excited about it now, because having done so much of this and now wanting to do more of it, it's like, oh, right, it's a different kind of hard. It's not that hard to be a joiner. It's not that hard to be around really good, happy, healthy people and meet great men. It's not that hard to put these things together or to show up at them. It's hard to schedule them, commit to them, pay for them, do the work to show up prepared, all of those things. So I love that kind of twofold process, like find the things, put them on the calendar, schedule them, commit to them, and then let's reverse engineer back to how you're going to show up in the best possible manner to make the most of it. So if that answers the question, that's kind of like the twofold way that I look at it. Like, let's announce all this stuff, kind of like ready, fire, aim, like let's announce all this stuff and get really, really excited about it. And now let's figure out how we're going to be our best when we show up to all of them.
Well, you're exactly the type of guy who I'd want to get behind and follow, because you don't want to necessarily be the joiner and be out there, but you're doing it anyways. And that's when you know you're around somebody who's authentic and walking their talks. So I can't say it strongly enough. Just following you all through your many medium and now getting to know you in person is truly, Greg. It's an honor. And I know this is a beginning, not an end of our relationship. So wherever that takes us, it takes us. But I can't thank you enough for your time and your inspiration.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And it's a privilege getting to know you. I love how these connections and these introductions happen genuinely, authentically like that, through our kids, through people, again, that we know mutually. I just think that, again, that organic way of these things developing is awesome. So let's continue to support one another and come out. I'll send you the calendar. Join me at anything.
Shout out to Auden, your son, and Yehuda, my son, down at AUPI in Boulder, and for bringing us together, and for Rabbi Brian Strauss in your neighborhood. A good friend of mine. So love you guys and appreciate the connections. And Greg, let's just keep it going.
Likewise, my friend. Thank you so much for having me. Happy, healthy New Year.
You too. Happy New Year, brother. Take care.
Take care.